All right, so I've done a lot of talking about this, but I feel like it's now time to actually show you some code in an environment. So if you've already programmed before, you're used to setting something up in an environment and kind of having access to certain tools that lets you test, verify, compile, and run the code. So for Arduino, it's a little bit different because it's kind of its own programming language, but obviously a lot of it is really based on C++. There's a couple more things to kind of pick up on here. The first thing is um, when you start a new file here, if I just go File, New, or if I use these buttons here, do the same thing as in the menus, uh, you're going to get something like this. This line will not be here, and I've put these lines in already, but obviously the comment right here is pretty indicative of what's going on. So you have your void setup, which is called by the Arduino once at the beginning, and then void loop, which is called over and over. So if you're used to like having a main method, that's what this loop is right here, and that's a little bit different about Arduino. So going through these other things here, file, new, open, save, it's just like other programs you've probably encountered before. These buttons also do the same thing. Also going into sketch, so verify and compile and upload, it's the same as these two buttons. So verify is just kind of compiling it, make sure there's no errors that are going to stop it from running. And then when you're good on that, you can hit upload when the board is plugged in and it will upload your code to the board. Or if you want to do both in the same step, you can just hit upload and it'll verify it and then upload it. Going into some of these other tools for sketch, include library. I'll go over that later. This might also be important. For now, we're going to skip that. Tools. The ones that I will often use are serial monitor and serial plotter. So a little different with an Arduino. There's not a screen. It's not its own computer. It's kind of hard to get feedback about what's going on. So I just set up a really basic hello world program here. So this serial.begin, serial as in serial communication is the way that the Arduino communicates with your computer through USB. And these methods are included in the language. They're keywords. So serial.begin means I start a new kind of serial connection. And then this number here is the baud rate, which is the number of bits per second. You don't need to know what that means. And also, this is a very decent amount of information that's being sent every, I think, second. So honestly, just copy and pasting this line in, you don't really need to know how it works. It's probably going to be fine unless you're sending a huge amount of information. Then you might need to increase this number. But also keep in mind, if I go and I check perhaps my serial monitor here, I only have a certain number of options. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's only certain numbers that you can pick for your baud rate. But this 9600, it's going to work for probably any issue that you come into, but just don't be surprised if you encounter a program later with a different number here. If you try to look on your serial monitor, it's not coming up, you might need to change this baud rate so it matches what your Arduino is actually communicating with. So it sets this up once in the setup, and it calls my loop function. So serial.print line. So it's kind of curious, where is it printing to? Well, it's printing back over this connection back to your computer. So this one just says hello world. It's very basic hello world program. So I have another program that's currently running on the Arduino. That's another thing that's important to mention is as soon as you plug the Arduino into power, it will just start to run whatever's program is on it. So I have a program on there now, and if I upload this, it'll overwrite it. And then delay 500. This also just comes with the language. It's the number of milliseconds. So 500 is half of a normal second. So this program is going to open this serial connection, and it's just going to print hello world every half second. And that is going to show up if I go to my serial monitor, it'll be here. So right now something else is running. So let's see, I have my Arduino plugged in. If I hit upload, I do have to name it. So we'll just call this hello world. The other thing is it'll do this automatically for you, but to run an Arduino file, you need to make a folder for it first. So if I just hit save, it'll handle that for me. You can see it's going to run all this stuff here. You generally don't need to be reading that. You have this progress bar. All right. AVR done. Thank you. So that doesn't necessarily mean it worked, but we're just going to go through and analyze some of the stuff at the bottom to try to understand it. You don't need to understand some of this stuff, but some of it's helpful for debugging later. the main thing is this reading and writing is really important, because as long as you're writing to the device, that means that the information is actually getting to the device and it's being saved on it. And if you're not seeing this, um, there's some issue with the connection that's going on, or it's not recognizing the board. So this worked successfully. It wrote everything and then it verified that everything was written correctly. If you face issues with that, what you're usually going to want to do is go into tools. So the first thing is board. If you go in, there's a lot of different kinds of Arduinos, so you need to know what model yours is when you pick it. Otherwise, you won't be able to communicate. So I'm currently using an Arduino Nano Every, which is under the Mega AVR boards. It's right here. So that's correct. And then sometimes if you have boards that are not actually from the Arduino company and are knockoffs, you will need to change some of these settings because the chip that's in it might not be the same. I think if I go on my Uno here and I go look again, okay, so it's not for my Uno, but some of the times you might need to change this to the other one. I think it's actually under my Nano, but irrelevant. Point is, this might be helpful for debugging. It also totally depends on your issue. If you get an error here, I would usually just copy that, paste it into Google. It'll usually be a great friend of yours. The other one that's really important is port. So you use a USB connection to your computer, and your computer might have multiple USB ports. So right here, it's showing COM1 and COM4. So I have a bunch of USB ports on my computer. My Arduino is currently plugged into port 4, as you can see here. If the name of the Arduino doesn't come up when you plug it into the USB port, something is wrong with communicating with it. Just being able to plug it in, it should tell you what the board is already, so then you can just go straight to board and pick it from there. But this is another source of a lot of errors. If I try to change this to port 1 and then I try to upload it, it's going to verify all over again, which is going to go smoothly. And then it's going to try on COM1. And let's see, let's give it a moment here. Yeah, so something's wrong. It's not synchronizing with the board. It's trying to synchronize with the board. It's trying to communicate with the board, and it can't do that. And that's because there's nothing on COM1. So if I go and I change this back to port 4, and then I try to upload again, we're going to wait. All right, there was an error, and then somehow it just got through it and successfully uploaded it. So now that this is running, if I go to Tools, Serial Monitor, whoa, it prints out hello world over and over and over again every half second. You can also just clear output. It's kind of helpful. You have these other, settings here that are pretty self-explanatory. Timestamp, auto scroll. You can also send stuff back. So there's serial listen method. I'm not going to get into that now, but if you wanted to send something back, I could type it in here and hit send. If you want to look into any of this stuff particularly, I would suggest you Google it, but I wanted to walk through just super basic program, how to upload it, and some simple debugging that might come up with certain issues with your board.